June 22, 1941. The Wehrmacht crosses the Soviet border. The largest invasion in history begins. Adolf Hitler is looking at a map in his headquarters in Rassenburg. He slides his finger to Moscow. 8 weeks. Maximum 10 weeks. The Soviets will collapse, just like France. The generals are silent. Nobody objects, because Hitler has been right for the past 2 years. Poland for weeks. France 6 weeks. Why should the Soviets be any different? But someone is standing in the corner, looking worried. General Franz Halder, chief of the General Staff. That night he will write in his diary, "The Führer thinks the Soviets are like France." He's wrong, but nobody can tell him. 8 weeks later, the Wehrmacht will be 30 kilometers from Moscow. But Moscow won't fall. Snow will begin. Tanks will freeze. Soldiers will be cold. And Hitler will look out the window and whisper, "How can this be? France fell in 6 weeks. Why are the Soviets resisting?" This story is about the greatest strategic miscalculation in history. A man became intoxicated with past victories. He completely misread his enemy and caused the deaths of millions. Before we begin the story, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more people with these forgotten stories. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. Summer 1940. Paris has fallen. The French army collapsed in 6 weeks. The Wehrmacht is holding a victory ceremony in front of the Eiffel Tower. Hitler is touring the streets of Paris in the back seat of his Mercedes. He's smiling. Around him, shocked French people are watching. The world can't believe it. France, Europe's strongest army, defeated in 6 weeks. Hitler believed he was the architect of this victory. The generals were skeptical at first. The Ardennes is too risky, they had said. Hitler had insisted, "We'll do it." And it had worked. July 1940. Hitler is holding a meeting with his generals at headquarters. Everyone is drunk with victory. "Gentlemen, do you know how we defeated France?" Hitler asks. "Because we are the superior race. German discipline crushed French chaos. German will destroy French weakness." The generals nod. But some of them are thinking, actually, we were lucky. The French made mistakes. We took advantage of the opportunity. But Hitler isn't listening. In his mind, a simple formula is forming. German army equals invincible. Enemy army equals weak. Blitzkrieg equals always works. This formula will be tested in the Soviets 2 years later, and it will shatter. August 1940. The Battle of Britain continues, but Hitler's mind is elsewhere. In the East, the Soviet Union. Hitler is talking with his inner circle at his summer house in Berghof. Göring, Ribbentrop, Keitel. "Gentlemen, Britain is stubborn, but the way to defeat them goes through Russia." Göring is surprised. "Mein Führer, but there's the Molotov Pact. The Soviets are neutral." Hitler smiles. Cold, calculated. "The pact is a piece of paper. Stalin doesn't trust us. We don't trust him. Sooner or later, we'll fight. I prefer to strike first." Ribbentrop is worried. "But Mein Führer, the Soviets are a giant. They have 5 million soldiers. The Red Army is large." Hitler waves his hand. Dismissive. "Size doesn't mean quality. The Soviet army is a paper tiger. After the 1917 revolution, they purged the Tsar's professional officers. Now communist amateurs are in command. Stalin had his own general shot in 1937 to 38. The army is leaderless. Morale is low. Equipment is old." Keitel is taking notes. Hitler continues. "Look at France. They also look strong on paper. But we attacked. It collapsed in 6 weeks. The Soviets will be the same. Maybe 8 weeks, maybe 10. But the result is the same. Collapse." This conversation is the foundation of Hitler's entire Barbarossa strategy, and it's based on completely false assumptions. 1939 to 1940 Winter War. The Soviets attacked Finland. Stalin expected an easy victory. Finland was small, population 3.5 million. The Soviets were a giant, 170 million. But Finland resisted. Snow, forest, guerrilla tactics. The Soviet army performed poorly. No coordination, weak leadership, heavy casualties. The world watched shocked. The Red Army isn't that strong. Hitler watched, took notes. March 1940. Finland asked for a ceasefire. The Soviets won, but spilled a lot of blood. 150,000 Soviet soldiers died. Hitler drew this conclusion from the Finnish War. The Red Army is incompetent, poor leadership, weak tactics. If little Finland could resist this much, what can we do? But Hitler missed a critical detail. The Soviets learned from Finland. They reorganized the army. They trained officers. They updated equipment. The 1941 Red Army was much stronger than 1939. Hitler didn't see this because he didn't want to see it. In his mind, the Soviets were still the pathetic army from Finland. Franz Halder, Wehrmacht Chief of General Staff, 57 years old, professional, detail-oriented strategist from the Prussian military tradition. Fall 1940, when Hitler began explaining the Barbarossa plan, Halder listened quietly. Then he returned to his office. He wrote in his diary, "The Führer is determined to attack Russia. Reasons: ideological, Bolshevism is the enemy; strategic, Lebensraum; tactical, forcing Britain to peace. But I'm worried. Russia is not France. Distance, climate, resources, everything is different." Halder conducted a detailed analysis. In France, the distance from Berlin to Paris is 1,000 kilometers. The terrain is flat and the road network is developed. The climate is temperate and predictable. But the country size is small and defense lines are limited. There's a leadership center, but it's ineffective in the Soviets. The distance from the border to Moscow is again 1,000 kilometers, but the country has infinite depth beyond Moscow. The terrain consists of forests, swamps, and steppes. The road network is weak. The climate is extreme. Summers are very hot. Winters are very cold. The country is enormous in size and defense depth is almost infinite. Leadership is in Stalin's hands. Centralized, ruthless, but disciplined. Halder concluded, Russia won't collapse like France, because there's no single center to collapse. Even if Moscow falls, they'll retreat east. The war will drag on. But Halder couldn't express these concerns to Hitler. Why? Because Hitler no longer listened to objections. In 1940, Hitler had defeated France, despite the general's objections. They had said the Ardennes is risky, but it had worked. Now the generals were silent, because Hitler was in I'm always right mode. Halder wrote in his diary, "I can't object to the Führer, because he's not listening." The French victory made him think he's a god. December 18, 1940, Hitler signed Directive 21, code name Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. The essence of the plan was simple. 3 army groups. North, Leningrad. Center, Moscow. South, Kiev, Ukraine. Rapid advance. Blitzkrieg. Destroy the Soviet army at the border. Within 8 to 10 weeks, reach Moscow. Soviet government collapses. Stalin flees. War ends. Hitler shared the plan with his generals. Meeting at the end of December. Gentlemen, Barbarossa will be our greatest victory. The Soviets are easier than France, because they are weak. We are strong. 10 weeks maximum. Then victory. The generals looked at each other. Nobody spoke. Rundstedt, commander of Army Group South, later told his aide, "The Führer is wrong, but who will tell him?" Bach, commander of Army Group Center, was skeptical, but remained silent. Lieb, commander of the North, just nodded. Halder took notes. He wrote in his diary, "The plan is ambitious, perhaps too ambitious, but the Führer is determined. We will implement it." January-May 1941, preparation. 3 million soldiers massed at the eastern border. Tanks, artillery, trucks. Secrecy was critical. The Soviets must not suspect. Stalin received reports. The Germans are massing at the border. But Stalin didn't believe it. Hitler won't attack us. It's too early. He must defeat Britain first. Hitler got exactly the reaction he wanted. Surprise. May 1941. A few generals dared one last time to voice their concerns. Guderian, Panzer commander, had a private meeting with Hitler. Mein Führer, the roads in Russia are bad. Our tanks could get stuck in the mud. Hitler, summer is dry. Roads will be hard. No problem. Guderian, but in autumn the rain. Hitler, will finish before autumn. 10 weeks, remember. Kleist, another tank commander, voiced logistical concerns. Mein Führer, fuel supply will be difficult. The distance is long. Our trucks may not be enough. Hitler, you'll capture Soviet fuel depots. You'll use their fuel. Kleist, but if the depots are destroyed? Hitler, they won't be destroyed. The Soviets aren't that organized. Manstein asked strategic questions. Mein Führer, even if we take Moscow, what if the Soviets retreat beyond the Urals? Hitler didn't even think. They won't retreat. When Moscow falls, the government collapses. Just like France. When Paris fell, France was finished. When Moscow falls, the Soviets are finished. This was Hitler's fundamental mistake. France was a centralized state. Paris was everything. But the Soviets were different. A giant. Industry in the East. Resources in Siberia. Moscow was important, but not the only center. Hitler didn't understand this, because he drew the wrong lesson from the French experience. June 22, 1941, Barbarossa began. The Wehrmacht attacked from 3 directions. North, center, south. Artillery fire, then tanks, then infantry. Soviet border units, shocked, not prepared at all. Stalin had said until the last moment, the Germans won't attack. Now they're attacking. First 24 hours, 1,200 Soviet aircraft destroyed, most on the ground before they could take off. First week, the Wehrmacht advanced 300 kilometers. Soviet defense shattered. Hitler listened to the reports. Excited. You see? I told you. The Soviets are collapsing like France. Halder presented a report. Mein Führer, progress is excellent, but Soviet resistance is tougher than expected. Hitler, tough? They've scattered. Halder, yes, but they're not completely collapsing. They're retreating but not disintegrating. They're staying organized. Hitler didn't listen. I said 10 weeks. There are still 9 weeks left. Moscow will fall. July. The advance continued. Battle of Smolensk. German victory. But casualties were higher than expected. Guderian sent a report. Tank losses are high. No spare parts. The Soviet T-34 tank is crushing our Panzer III. Hitler. T-34? Soviet technology can't be superior to ours. You're exaggerating. August, the advance slowed. Roads turned to mud. Rain began. Tanks got stuck. Hitler became angry. Why are you stopping? Advance. Commanders, there are no roads, Mein Führer. Mud is everywhere. Hitler, it rained in France too, but we didn't stop. But in France, there was a road network. Asphalt. In Russia, dirt roads. Mud was swallowing everything. Mid-September. The Wehrmacht is 300 kilometers west of Moscow. Still far. Hitler is looking at the map, irritated. 3 months have passed. I said 10 weeks. Why hasn't Moscow fallen yet? Halder explains. Mein Führer, the distance is longer than expected. Soviet resistance is stronger than expected. Our casualties. Hitler bangs the table. Casualties. Excuses. We had casualties in France too. But did we stop? No. Halder. But Mein Führer, in France we had 30,000 casualties in 6 weeks. Here, for 100,000 casualties in 3 months. Hitler freezes. For 100,000? Halder. Yes. Dead, wounded, missing. The Wehrmacht is being depleted. Hitler doesn't want to accept this. But we're winning. We're winning every battle. Halder. Yes. But the Soviets are forming new armies. They're bringing units from the east, from Siberia. While we're being depleted, they're getting stronger. Hitler doesn't understand this. In his mind, there's still the French model. One big blow. The center collapses, the war ends. But the Soviets are different. Even if the center collapses, the periphery continues. October 2nd, Hitler launched Operation Typhoon. Target, Moscow. Gentlemen, the final move will take Moscow before winter. When Moscow falls, the Soviets will surrender, just like France. The Wehrmacht attacked toward Moscow. In the first weeks, progress. By the end of October, 80 kilometers from Moscow. But then snow began. Early, beginning of November, temperature dropping. The Germans are unprepared. No winter clothing. Tank oil is freezing. Trucks aren't working. Soldiers are freezing. Guderian sent a report. Mein Führer, winter has come. Our troops are freezing. We must retreat. Hitler, no. Continue advancing. Moscow is 50 kilometers away. Guderian, but the men are dying of cold. Hitler, then let them advance faster. They'll warm up in Moscow. By the end of November, the Wehrmacht stopped 30 kilometers from Moscow. Couldn't advance further. Winter too harsh. Casualties too heavy. December 5th, Soviet counteroffensive began. The Red Army repelled the Wehrmacht from Moscow. The first major defeat. Hitler received the news. Couldn't believe it. How can this be? We were invincible. In France. Halder come. Mein Führer, this isn't France. This is Russia. 1945. Hitler committed suicide. But in his final days, he never regretted Barbarossa. In the bunker, April 1945, to his aides, Barbarossa was a right decision. We had to attack the Soviets sooner or later. The mistake was the timing. If we had waited a year, maybe it would have been different. But the truth, even if he had waited a year, the result would have been the same. Because the fundamental mistake was seeing the Soviets as France. After the war, the surviving general spoke. Halder, the Führer thought Russia was like France. That was his biggest mistake. We told him, but he didn't listen. Guderian, Barbarossa was a lost war from the start. Because the Führer didn't understand geography, climate, logistics, none of it. He just said France fell in 6 weeks. But Russia is not France. Manstein, the Führer's ego destroyed strategic thinking. He believed he was a god. Gods are infallible. But he was wrong. On June 22nd, 1941, Hitler played the biggest military gamble in history. He believed the Soviets would collapse in 6 to 8 weeks like France. He was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The Soviets fought for 4 years, lost 27 million people, but remained standing, and in the end, reached Berlin. Hitler's mistake wasn't just military. It was psychological, ideological, stemming from his character, overconfidence, prejudice, not listening to experts, not seeing reality. These mistakes aren't unique to Hitler. They're part of human nature. That's why history is important. It reminds. It warns. It teaches. Hitler saw the Soviets as France. He saw what he shouldn't have seen, and paid the price. Germany paid. The world paid. History's lesson. Ego is the most dangerous enemy. A leader who is too confident in himself is doomed to fail. If this story affected you, please hit the like button. Every like helps us reach more people with these forgotten stories. If you're new, subscribe, turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.